Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. This is the Elected Officials Transportation Committee meeting, a joint meeting between Pitkin County, City of Aspen, and the town of Snowmass Village. That'll be a call to order, and let's have a roll call for attendance. We'll start with Pitkin County. The chair, Kelly McNicholas Curry, are you here?
I am here in the room.
Francie Jacober, are you here?
My name is Francie Jacober, and I am here.
Jacober is here. Greg Poshman, how do you like your name pronounced?
Poshman.
Thank you, Greg. You're here as well. Patty Clapper?
Patricia K. Clapper.
Patricia K. Clapper, are you here?
Yeah.
She is. And Steve Child.
I am here in the Glenwood Library.
Town of Snowmass Village, Mayor Madsen.
I am here.
Tom Fritzstein.
I am here.
Tom Good.
I'm here.
Alyssa Shank.
I'm here.
And Bob Circus.
He's on mute.
Muted, but
He
here.
can't hear us, and we can't hear him.
You guys leave him
He's
on
not
mute.
here, but he's here. I'm here.
Thank you, Bob. And City of Aspen, John Doyle.
Here.
Rachel Richards.
Here.
Skippy Mesereau.
Present.
Ward Hounstein.
Here.
And Tori is here as well. All present and accounted for. We need to start by approving the July 29th minutes. That would require a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the minutes?
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
I'm wondering, Dave, I appreciate the narrative minutes. I find them to be very helpful. I understand they might be very laborious. The BOCC does not keep narrative minutes. We keep action minutes. I don't know if that's the same for the other jurisdictions. So I just wanted to check in with you about why we get the minutes this way.
Sorry, the action minutes.
Well, yeah, the minutes you've presented have been narrative, and I guess I would wonder if the board, if we need them to be narrative, or if we can save some of Dave's time and have them be action minutes.
Any comments?
I am happy to slim them down if that works for you, and make them more action oriented. They are kind of a hybrid between narrative and action minutes, to be honest with you.
Agnostic on it. I'm fine with it the way it is.
Yeah, if we can cut it down to save some time, that's fine for me. But I just think that perhaps for future EOTCs, trying to look back to our dialogue and what was the back and forth before a decision was made, sometimes that's important. But, to kind of back some is fine with me, and, as long as people's kind of broader comments and requests are kept.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments? Is that good enough direction? That something that works for you?
I think so.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, and we need a roll call vote by jurisdiction. So Pitkin County.
Aye.
That's a Patty Clapper, aye.
Aye.
That's a Greg Poshman, aye.
Aye.
That's
Aye.
a Steve Child, aye. And the chair,
Aye.
Kelly, as well.
And Francie?
And Francie?
Aye.
It's unanimous. How about that? Town of Snowmass Village. Mayor Madsen?
Yes.
Tom Fritzstein?
Yes.
It's a hand and a nod and a voice. Tom Good?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
And Bob?
Yes.
Thank you. City of Aspen. We'll start again. John Doyle?
Yes.
Rachel Richards?
Yes.
Skippy Mesereau?
See.
Ward?
Yes.
And myself is a yes as well. Thank you, guys. This is an opportunity for public comment. This is a chance for members of the public to address these three boards together. for items not listed on the agenda. We do ask that you limit your comments to about 3 minutes, just for the fairness of getting everybody's comments in a timely manner. Are there members of the public that wish to speak to the EOTC this evening? And I'm looking at both WebEx as well as in room. We have none in room. Are there any members that are of the public on WebEx that care to make public comment this evening? Hearing and seeing none, we'll go ahead and close out a portion of our agenda and move on. This is an opportunity for EOTC committee member updates. Are there any committee member updates this evening? Yes.
I just want to make a quick comment. This is Patty Clapper for the record. I just read in the paper today about Garfield County putting in $500,000 for the hogback service. I just wanted to for any members of this group that didn't see it, and I want to commend Garfield County for stepping up to the plate and funding that bus service.
You?
It's a big win.
Yeah, I've been in touch with somebody in Perth, Australia about trackless trams, and he's graciously agreed to give a presentation free of charge. So when I get that set up, I'll forward that to all of you so you can join in to see what I'm really excited about on trackless trams.
Thank you, Ward. Rachel?
Yeah, I was caught off guard. I don't have the title right in front of me for this year's ballot, the statewide initiative questions. But I did want to point out that the one that is out there to reduce property tax temporarily for a few years could really set back the property tax initiative that is funding the increased RAFTA services that we had just passed. It also, while we've analyzed our budget and looked at the past ones, it's only about a $400,000 difference between last year's measure and this year's potential impact. But I think it would really impact the school district much more strongly, and groups such as the River District, which, as you know, just passed a small mill levy last November to be able to help protect our water resources during the state's efforts to continue to flow it all to the Front Range while PAL dries out. So I just wanted to point that out. If you guys haven't taken positions or taken a look at how it would affect your local budgets, it will probably affect the budget of a great many of the agencies we deal with and depend on, whether it's fire district, ambulance district, or so on. So it's kind of interesting. Our governor has voiced his support for the measure. It took me a little while to realize, well, the state doesn't collect property tax. It's not going to affect his budget at all. But it will affect every municipality and every special district in the state. So take a look at it. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Rachel. Greg, got a hand raised from you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just, this is part of the continuing Greg's book club, flogging some books on electrification. The first one I'd love to share with everybody is called Electrify, an Optimist's Playbook for Our Clean Energy Future by Saul Griffith. It's it's got a lot of great information in it. One thing I can say from the back cover is it zeroes in on two of the most urgent issues we face in coping with climate change and dodging what they're saying as an on-rushing mass extinction event. It's how to transform our clean energy supply to clean renewables as quickly as possible, and crucially, how to pay for this work. This is an easy reading book. It has an entire section on what you can do if you happen to be an elected official or an electrician or a bus driver or a school teacher. It's a worthwhile read, and I'd love to get other people to join me with that. The other one is a book that just was released yesterday. It's called Speed and Scale. It's by John Doerr, and it's an action plan, actual steps action plan for solving a climate crisis. And it has a huge section on transportation in it, as well as housing, as well as food, as well as policy, and turning movements into action. I think this book could actually be a great tool when we're trying to figure out how to approach what is a huge problem. So those are my two book club recommendations. I'm working through them now. And if anybody wants to get their hands on a copy, you should get a hold of me. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Any other member comments this evening?
Sorry, this is Steve Child. I can't see where the raise your hand function is. Last week I was in Santa Cruz, California. I got to observe, and my wife Molly got to ride on a futuristic train, kind of like a streetcar called Futura. When it's fully operational, it will be run on hydrogen fuel cells. It will run for 20 hours on one charge, so they don't have to. They can run the whole day and not have to stop to recharge the fuel cells. The train, they plan to run it eventually from Watsonville through Santa Cruz to Davenport. So that would be a distance of maybe about 30 miles or so. I will be keeping my eye on it. They haven't approved building the thing yet. They have the tracks in place already, but the tracks would need upgrading. It could be technology that at some point we might want to look at here in, maybe from the Brush Street Park and right into Aspen possibly.
Thank you, Steve. Francie?
Yeah, I'm not sure this is the right venue for mentioning this, but since it's transportation, it's the closest I could get. I don't know if any of you experienced the puddle on 82 just before the Conoco coming from this direction. It's right near that turnaround, that place to turn around. It is an incredibly deep and dangerous puddle, and I've talked to quite a few people who have encountered it. And I was coming home from a wedding a couple of weeks ago and hit it, and it almost stopped my truck, and it put so much water over my windshield that I had no vision whatsoever. So I don't know how we deal with that, but it's really, really dangerous. And I think it's in that low spot along that wall there. So I don't know where to go with that other than, I don't know, but it's really scary. Same thing happened.
Has there been the CDOT meeting with the county that they always have once a year on highway conditions and updating on their work plans? Because that would be where I would pop it in.
Once a year?
Once a year, CDOT would always come and give a presentation. I don't know if they've already done it with you for this year.
Well, actually, we can just go to Brian Pettit, and I thought Dave making notes. Brian can contact CDOT about it, Francie.
Yeah, I can contact CDOT as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Because quite a few Down Valley people are quite familiar with it.
Okay.
It's really, really scary.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Very good.
And David is suggesting that he'll follow up on that.
Yeah, I'll follow up with CDOT on that.
Great. Thank you. Other member comments this evening? All right, well, let's get into the meat of our agenda then. Our first item is a public hearing for the 2022 EOTC proposed budget, and David will do some presenting.
See if I can get my slides to change. Oh, there they go. So before we get into I guess I'll introduce myself first. I am David Pesnichak, the Regional Transportation Administrator for the Elected Officials Transportation Committee. Before we get into the action items, I did want to run through, as we do with every meeting, and remind everybody about the EOTC vision statement, mission statement, and guiding state statutes and voter requirements. We do have a vision statement that states that we envision the Roaring Fork Valley as the embodiment of a sustainable transportation system, emphasizing mass transit and mobility that contributes to the happiness and well-being of residents and visitors. We also have a mission statement that states that we will work collectively to reduce and manage the volume of vehicles on the road and parking system, and continue to develop and support a comprehensive multimodal long-range strategy that will ensure a convenient, equitable, and efficient transportation system for the Roaring Fork Valley. And then we are bound by certain state statutes and voter requirements, and specifically that EOTC funds must be utilized for financing, constructing, operating, and managing the mass transportation system within the Roaring Fork Valley. And before getting into the first item, I did want to provide more or less an umbrella view from the development goals going into this budget and work plan season. So if you recall from 2019, we did have a retreat, and the goals from that retreat were to essentially get the EOTC quote-unquote house in order. So in 2020, we did adopt the EOTC's first strategic plan, as well as updated the Comprehensive Valley Transportation Plan, or CVTP, and that hadn't been updated since 1993. This last year, we also updated the EOTC 1993 IGA, and at the last meeting, we adopted the Near-Term Transit Improvement Program. So moving forward, we are looking to support and continue to move forward on the current projects and efforts that were already underway, as well as start progress on the Tier 1 2021 EOTC Near-Term Transit Improvement Program that was adopted this last July. And then looking at the next steps, so 2023 and beyond, we are looking at continuing implementation of the Near-Term Transit Improvement Program, as well as continuing to evolve with the conversations on long-term planning. So getting into the budget itself then, so as I believe you're all aware, the last couple years have been very turbulent for everybody financially, from 2019 through 2021. So we've not only had the impacts of COVID-19, but we've also had the downward pressure from House Bill 19-1240, which, if you recall, is the Wayfair v. South Dakota decision that altered how sales and use taxes are collected. As a result of House Bill 19-1240, staff has been working over the last couple years with RAFTA to figure out a plan for them to assume the cost of the no-fare service going forward, which is roughly equivalent to the lost revenue that the EOTC would be seeing. I know some of you are aware that at the October 14th RAFTA board meeting, they did vote to assume the cost of the no-fare service. And as a result, this will free up additional financial capacity for the EOTC going forward, starting in 2022. Even with that, future revenues do remain difficult to predict. So that's just due to the general climate that we have. As a result, late adjustments are possible within the budget, and I think, as you know, 2020 and 2021 have been much stronger than expected. And from what I understand from the County Finance Department is we shouldn't expect that to become the new normal. So it should level out here within the next couple of years. But looking at 22 through 26, which is the budget horizon for the EOTC, we are expected to meet all current ongoing operational costs, currently obligated projects, as well as the new and increased project requests. So don't want to go through this whole chart. We went over this at each of the prep meetings, looking at the sales tax and use tax revenues. But I do want to focus on the EOTC total revenue to begin with. So you can more or less think of EOTC revenue at this point as being pre-House Bill 19-1240 and post-House Bill. So pre-House Bill, we were bringing in or had revenues of about $3 million per year. That is decreasing down to about $2 million a year, and we expect will then increase based on inflation and economic activity from there. The last two lines, this is the EOTC unobligated fund balance. The second to last line here, this is the unobligated fund balance that is reflected within your packet. The packet itself was published before RAFTA assumed the cost of the no-fare service. So the bottom line here, that is the unobligated fund balance without the no-fare service. And as a I guess, to let you know what's coming up, this staff is going to recommend, or does recommend, that you all adopt a budget that does not include the cost of the no-fare service from 2022 through 2026. So that is why I included this bottom line here to show that we are looking at increased unobligated fund balance, and these increased fund balances will be reflected in that staff recommended budget. Looking at the budget revenue graphically, I know this is helpful for me. This is showing EOTC revenue going from 2004 through 2026. You can see the drop from 2019 through 2022. That corresponds to the drop, or the decrease in transit use tax. And functionally, what we're seeing here is the elimination of the construction use tax. And moving forward from 2022 forward, we will maintain the motor vehicle use tax, which brings in about $350,000 to $400,000 a year. The light blue line, that is the 18.96% of revenue that the EOTC sees from the half-cent sales tax. The flip side of that is the dotted black line. So that is the 81.04% of sales tax that goes directly to RAFTA. As you can see, there's a disparate increase in the RAFTA revenue relative to the EOTC revenue. So it is this diverging revenue that's going to the EOTC that motivated the mitigation measure of transferring the no-fare service from the EOTC to RAFTA. And then getting into the budget a little bit, into a little bit more detail, looking at ongoing and operational expenses. This is just an overview of what is within your budget. We do have use tax collection and county overhead in at $151,000. This is billed a year in arrears, so this is based on actual expenses, based on county overhead for the Regional Transportation Administrator in terms of like HR, GIS, IT, as well as tax collection costs specifically for use tax collection, as well as insurance. This actually decreased from $177,000 last year, and the reason for that decrease is the elimination of the construction use tax, which was very time intensive on a personnel side. So we are seeing cost savings actually as a result of that House bill in that line item. And then looking at administrative and meeting costs, this is increasing at inflation for meeting costs such as GrassRoots, as well as employee costs, cell phones, computers, that kind of thing. And then we have Aspen Country Inn Taxi Program. The use of this program fluctuates pretty wildly year to year, but it seems as though 7,000 seems to be the higher end of that, and we have that increasing at inflation moving forward. Brush Creek Park and Ride operating costs, this is increasing notably. If you look at your budget, it's increasing from about $42,000 a year to $95,000 a year in 2022. This is as a result of the placement of, hopefully next year, of the restroom facilities and having to operate and maintain those restroom facilities. So we did look back at the operational costs for Ruby Park, as well as the restroom facilities that RAFTA operates within their park and ride facilities. And it does appear that just under $100,000 is where we expect it, but we'll continue to monitor that over the next couple years. And then the no-fare Aspen Snowmass Woody Creek service, this is what's being transferred to RAFTA starting in 2022. So that's $851,000 that is transferring to RAFTA, and we recommend that you remove this from your budget moving forward. And then the bottom line here, that is the Regional Transportation Administrator position at $152,000. That does cover all salary, county benefits, health insurance, and wellness. And then into the, I guess more or less the meat of the budget here includes renewals, carry forwards, and new requests. This is an overview. I'll go through these in a little bit more detail on the next few slides. But we do have 2 renewals, and for those of you who have been through an EOTC budgeting process before, these should look familiar to you. Including WeCycle operational support and X Games bus subsidy. We also have 1 carry forward from 2021 to 2022, which is the Brush Creek Park and Ride FLAP grant, or Federal Lands Access Program grant. And then we have 5 new requests, including the bicycle and pedestrian connection to the Brush Creek Park and Ride, to the ABC and Rio Grande Trail Phase 2. We have the Trescott to Owl Creek Trail, the Buttermilk Underpass and Transit Signal Bypasses, and the Snowmass Direct Transit Service Improvements Analysis, and then finally the permanent automated vehicle counters. So looking at these in a little bit more detail, WeCycle operational support, the request is for $100,000. This is a 1-year request. This level of support is consistent with previous years. It is only a 1-year request because WeCycle is in negotiations and talks with RAFTA to determine their future relationship. Not too sure yet exactly where that's going to land. There is a first-class mobility study going on with RAFTA right now that's supposed to conclude by the end of the year that will inform that relationship. And then X Games bus subsidy. This is a request for $115,000, and again, a 1-year request. This is in line with historical levels of support for the X Games bus subsidy. I think it is important to remember that this is a reimbursable bus subsidy, so it's not to exceed $115,000. So if, say, similar to last year, where COVID impacted attendance and those buses did not run, then these dollars will not go out. So if you see in your budget, there is actually a blank last year for the X Games. Those funds were actually obligated through the EOTC, but we never received an invoice since that event did not occur in person. Moving on to the carry forward, we do have the Brush Creek Park and Ride Federal Lands Access Program grant. This is to carry forward about $3.3 million for the total projected project cost of $6.9 million. I think it is important to remember that the $6.9 million that was estimated at 100% plans, but that was the beginning of 2020 that we received that estimate. The other funding for this project includes the Federal Lands Access Program through the Federal Highways Administration at $2.4 million. We have CMAQ, or Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality funding, at $1.545 million. And we also have RAFTA funding at $500,000. And the total EOTC match of about $3.5 million, bring the total obligated funds right now at about $7.9 million. So that is about $1 million more than our estimate at the beginning of 2020. Staff is recommending that we maintain the same level of obligated funds because construction costs have been going up so rapidly over the last year and a half. This project did go out to bid this past Monday, and those bids closed December 7th. So we should know by mid-December exactly where we stand in terms of the funds that we have obligated and the actual construction cost. The next project is the bicycle and pedestrian connection to the Brush Creek Park and Ride. This is phase 2. Phase 1 is going on now. This is a request for $25,000 for a $75,000 total request, or total project. This is a partnership project with the EOTC, Pickens County Open Space and Trails, and the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space Departments. The cost share between the three entities is 1/3 each partner. We are looking at progressing several priorities within the Comprehensive Valley Transportation Plan with this project, including park and ride lot improvements, first and last mile solutions, bicycle and pedestrian connections, or as well as bicycle and pedestrian connections at transit stops, and particularly the Brush Creek Park and Ride. Phase 1, we do have SGM under contract for phase 1 right now. The report out from that is projected to be your first meeting of next year in March. So based on the report out meetings that we have, and those will occur with the Pickens County Open Space and Trails Board, the Aspen Parks and Open Space Board, and the EOTC, will determine whether we move forward into phase 2. Phase 2 is the public outreach and stakeholder engagement on those identified technically feasible options. But we are looking to secure the funding now for next year in case we do want to move forward with phase 2 at that time. The next project is the Tresca to Owl Creek Trail. This is feasibility, planning and design. This was identified as a Tier 1 priority project within the near-term transit improvement program. This is a 2022 request for $200,000 and progresses several CVTP priorities, including first and last mile solutions, transit accessibility, as well as bicycle and pedestrian connections to transit stops. The preliminary cost estimates on this project is $200,000 in design, about $1,050,000 in construction, bringing the total project to $1.25 million. In concept, we're looking at a 10-foot shared use path between Tresca with a spur up to Hideaway Lane, down to Buttermilk, which is about a 1.3 mile stretch. The purpose of this trail is to connect those businesses as well as Aspen Country Inn and Pomegranate Condos with those protected crossings that we have across Highway 82 nearest to those locations. The goal is to get it as close to shovel-ready next year as possible with the $200,000 to make it as competitive for grants and other construction funding as we can get. The next one is the Buttermilk Underpass and Transit Signal Bypasses. This is a feasibility, stakeholder input, and initial design. This, again, is a Tier 1 priority from the Near-Term Transit Improvement Program and is a 2022 request for $200,000. There are several goals that are looking to be progressed with this project. The first one is superior protection to bicyclists and pedestrians across Highway 82, and this encourages transit access. The second one is to remove the pedestrian crossing time on Highway 82 at Owl Creek Road. This will reduce transit and motorist congestion. And the third one is to increase transit efficiency by allowing transit vehicles to bypass one of the two signals, so down valley at Owl Creek Road and up valley at Harmony Road. This would then increase transit efficiency and speed. It does progress several CVTP priorities, including park and ride lot improvements, specifically at Buttermilk, the first and last mile solutions, as well as transit speed, accessibility, reliability, and efficiency enhancements. We are progressing the Upper Valley priority of bicycle and pedestrian connections to transit stops. And continuing with this project, it does consist of three main physical improvements. The first one is a grade-separated bicycle and pedestrian crossing at Buttermilk. The second one is the bypass lane going down Valley at Harmony, and the third one is the bus bypass lane going up Valley at Harmony, and down Valley at Owl Creek, at the Owl Creek signal. I think it is important to remember with this that the grade-separated pedestrian crossing is important in order to achieve the bus bypass lanes, because we would need to eliminate the at-grade bicycle and pedestrian crossing at that signal. The preliminary cost estimates that we have from Mead and Hunt on this project include $830,000 in design. We're looking at $200,000 in 2022 for initial design stakeholder input and feasibility before allocating more funding to this project, and also we have hopes of gaining grant assistance with the remaining design work. The construction estimate at this point is $8.57 million, bringing the total project cost to $9.4 million. I think it's obvious that with costs as high as this, we are looking at requiring grants and other partnerships in order to get it through construction, and the EOTC isn't necessarily in a position to fund this whole project outright. Currently, RAFTA has obligated $500,000 toward this project as a part of their Destination 2040, and it is currently on the Intermountain Transportation Planning Region 2045 multimodal priorities list, which while that doesn't come with funding, it really helps gaining other funding. And moving on to the second to last project, this one is the Snowmass Direct Transit Service Analysis. This is a Tier 1 priority from the Near-Term Transit Improvement Program, and it's a $50,000 request. The goal of this is to analyze transit service to and from Snowmass in order to identify ways to maximize that transit service. Specifically, this came from the Integrated Mobility System study that wrapped up this past year that informed the Near-Term Transit Improvement Program. And it identified Snowmass as being the second highest destination within the RAFTA network. However, it is impacted heavily by transfer penalties at the Brush Creek Park and Ride. So saying, hey, we believe that we can get more people on transit up to Snowmass if we really target that direct service for those riders that want to go up there. So this study is to look at the whole system and find out how best to target those that schedule and those trips. We are progressing several CVTP priorities with this, including transit efficiency, as well as Snowmass Village to Brush Creek Park and Ride service commensurate with Highway 82 corridor service. If this is funded, we are looking at a report out to the EOTC in spring of 2023. So it would occur in 22 with a report out in early 23. And then the last one, this is the permanent automated vehicle counters, planning, design, permitting, and installation. This is a Tier 1 priority from the Near-Term Transit Improvement Program at a request of $200,000. The goal here is to add counters in addition to the Castle Creek Bridge counter in order to better track VMT and greenhouse gas emissions as well as congestion over time. So this does promote several CVTP priorities, including technologies and innovation to encourage mode shift as well as multimodal solutions to the entrance to Aspen. I think it's important to remember here that this is the back-end data collection component to these so that we can better analyze how effective other programs are moving forward. At this point, we are looking to get a consultant on board that is intimately familiar with the technologies available and where they would best work within our network before identifying specific locations, although we do have some idea of locations that we'd like to see them. We have budgeted for we're hoping up to 5 additional counters, so that would bring our total Upper Valley to 6, including Castle Creek Bridge. And we are planning on full project completion within 2022 for those counters. And that brings me to this is an overview of the staff recommended budget that is within your packet. This one does include maintaining the cost of the no fare service through 26. And the staff recommendation is to adopt an authorized signature on a resolution of approval for the staff proposed 2022 EOTC budget without the no fare service cost. So that impacts the 2 lines that are circled here. So it eliminates the cost from 22 through 26 for the no fare service, and that then increases your unobligated EOTC fund balance. So with that, I'd like to open up to any questions or comments you might have on the budget.
Patty, start with you.
Yeah, you know, I know George Newman was the big push for the underpass at Owl Creek. I think completing the trail connection, which I've been talking about for years, which I think would be great, from Buttermilk to Truscott or just Buttermilk to the Maroon Creek Club underpass. I think that's a huge step, and I think completing that will show that we have a safe crossing. The impacts, besides the budget impacts, but the impacts to the traveling community for that project are going to be enormous because of all of the utilities that are through there. They have to change the grade of the trail on the other side because of that steep slope. There's a lot of major construction issues there. It's going to take some time to complete that. And we found those increased costs when we did the underpass at the airport. So the fact that there's already 3 underpasses right there, one at the airport, one at Harmony Road, and one at Maroon Creek, and one at Truscott. Maybe we should be looking at seeing the success and the efficiency of that trail, just connecting people along the Truscott side of the highway. So I'm hoping that that'll show us that maybe we don't need to spend over $10 million to put in that underpass. But, you know, public safety is first, and I think the trail is a great idea, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Nancy?
Yeah, just a question about the vehicle counters. It seems like $200,000 for vehicle counters is really high. I don't know anything about vehicle counters except for little wires that go across the road every once in a while. I mean, what are they like now that they cost $40,000 each?
So a lot of it depends on the vehicle counter. So they can be in pavement, they can be above pavement looking down, and the application really depends on the visual impact that's associated with it and where it's located, as well as really the road surface. Is it going to be redone? So does it make sense to do an in pavement or not? So this is, I believe, an upper end estimate. So the Picken County engineer did reach out to his contacts for vehicle counters, which is how we landed on $200,000. And in order to make sure that we can at least get the 5, we wanted to make sure that we budgeted appropriately to get those.
Yeah, and a big part of this is the software component.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, you have to, it's not just the physical counters, getting those in and out depends on the system, but you also need the right software and somebody to maintain that software and to maintain the system. So those can be quite pricey. In my mind, I don't think that's enough money, but I guess we'll see how it turns out.
I see. Okay.
We looked into some other systems before. The maintenance of the software and the software systems and getting on there was a big chunk.
Okay. Well, that explains a lot. Thank you.
Other comments? Rachel?
Yeah, I have a comment a little bit similar to Patty's. When I look at 9.4 million as a potential project number at Buttermilk, and knowing how we're seeing construction inflation year to year, I think that number will end up being very low compared to real cost. But the bigger point is we're speeding transit up for a mile and a quarter to then run into mixed traffic at the roundabout. And, you know, it seems like that's an awful lot of money to speed people up for less than a mile and a quarter to then hit the next big traffic snag that we haven't worked on. And I'm hoping that the entrance and discussions about the entrance and how to deal with that effectively will be a major part of our trip planning retreat in April, because we're just rearranging the deck chairs with these sort of things. Thank you.
Mayor Madsen?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to the RAFTA board. I think moving this no-fare service to RAFTA and out of our budget is going to give us a lot more opportunity to work on projects rather than operations. So I think that was a really important move.
Yeah. Should we send an EOTC letter of thanks or appreciation?
Sure. I mean,
That's a good
I
idea.
think it's always helpful.
Yeah, I think we should thank the board of directors at some form. Some staff member help us pull that together.
I think Dave's really good at writing things.
Okay, great.
should thank Dave because he's worked hard at the staff level on this with Rafter for quite a few months to try to get this through, so.
Yeah, I noticed it was in the 2022 work plan, and you've already accomplished it, so that's pretty good.
I have to give a lot of kudos to the RAFTA staff and the creativity that they showed and willingness to work with us, I think was remarkable.
Okay, well, then you're the right person to write the letter.
And Bob, hand up.
Yeah, please. Thanks. So, David, I guess pre-COVID, when we talked about this buttermilk underpass, the question came up of what data did we have that would indicate the number of people that were, crossing at that, or the number of times a day, which is probably more important. There are people crossing at that intersection, and so my question is, do we have any data? Have we moved further in trying to get any data on that issue?
So I did touch base with Mead and Hunt, who did the modeling for this, and it was from their modeling that this rose to the top as one of the projects that should be pursued in order to increase transit efficiency through the corridor. And what they did, because CDOT doesn't keep counts of how many people actually hit the button to cross, they used a combination of big data to see how quickly vehicles are moving through that corridor in reality, in real life, versus modeling what they would go through if that button were never hit. And that it's fairly easy to model it out if you don't have people hitting that button. So what they did is they looked at the difference between what the real travel time is versus what the modeled travel time would be if there were no crosswalk there, and took the difference there to determine what that savings would be.
So this is all theoretical then, right?
Well, it's based on the modeling data, which is what we asked Mead and Hunt to do. So everything that moved forward from that study is based on that modeling data in terms of trying to identify which would be most.
Do we know how many seconds or minutes the walk light cycle is?
I don't know off the top of my head exactly what the walking cycle is. The estimate was that this would save upwards of 2 minutes going up valley and down valley on a bus trip on average during peak times.
Okay, thank you.
Ward?
Yeah, on the same subject, I have real reservations about it. I know that it's a dangerous intersection for pedestrians, and even if the pedestrian walk is on to cross 82, people coming down from Owl Creek Road, it's just a really dangerous pedestrian crossing there. But $10 million roughly for this it just raises real concern for me.
Thank you.
I would add too that there has been some discussion about wanting to make Buttermilk a more productive and effective park and ride facility, and having a protected crosswalk there will make it. It's an improvement towards that goal. So it's not just improving what we already have, but making a next step toward where it sounds like we want to go with that facility.
Can I mention? Yeah. And keep in mind, Ward, that even the ABC underpass, a lot of these other projects, it's been grant funded, supported. So there are grants out there that could contribute quite a bit to the cost of it as well.
And I think that's an important point, is that making progress now and showing that commitment, we are potentially looking at higher state revenues or state dollars for transportation, as well as, we'll see on the federal side, but hopefully we'll start seeing some federal dollars coming through. Showing a commitment toward this project is what gets our foot in the door to be competitive for those dollars. So I think we are at a time where we might be able to see some good money for a project like this. and that we're not fully committing to $10 million right now. So we're more or less putting our toe in the water, showing commitment to see if we can get to that point.
And where this project is did make it on the state list, more or less the cut there. So there's support, and CDOT is aware and educated on it. So we went to some lengths at the TPR to make sure they understood it and what the project was. So there is some support there if and when funding becomes available.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say I'm not interested in holding this up or pulling it out of this budget, especially if we can receive better grant funding. But I really just want to, put it on the record that we're spending or looking to spend a lot of state and taxpayer-funded dollars for a very small transit improvement that then goes into a 2-lane mixed traffic bottleneck. And I'd like to see the same commitment over time to dealing with that issue as well. And I'd also like to see a little ski company participation if we can at this. This is a skier lot as much as it's a hopeful modal lot for other cars in the future.
Just one last thought on the funding side. We actually need some projects for the TPR for the Highway 82 corridor. Most of the projects that are on there are all on the I-70 side, and they're big projects with a lot of dollars associated with them, and they could tie up the funding for a long time. So we're actually kind of in need of
getting something on there.
Some projects over here on the 82 side. So that's something to think about as well.
It's ancient history now. John, you'd probably know better, but Eagle County was key intent on another large bridge and exit ramp off the interstate to bring people over to Costco, and they were bringing up, was it 140 million or 70 million or something like that on that list, and they're moving ahead, and we're not as a community because we don't have anything for the entrance. Just want to note that. Thank you.
Steve.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'm okay. I think I'm unmuted now. I agree with Rachel. It could take buses 15 minutes to get out of town to the roundabout from down in town because of the traffic is so pumped up there in the road system. And in terms of Buttermilk, I still would favor looking at an overpass. Some people said, well, that would block the view of the mountains, but there are some incredibly beautiful pedestrian overpasses in lots of different towns and cities in Colorado.
I'd like to use them.
And I would like to get an estimate, just a ballpark estimate on what the cost of that would be compared to the underpass. I think it would be way simpler to build and could be just as effective and could be very attractive. Thank you.
There's a request for information about an overpass.
I think we looked at that, so there should be some drawings and data on that from a few years ago.
We did, the EOTC did look at that once before, and the group at that time ruled it out as something they didn't want to pursue, mainly because it required elevators on both sides into the design, and that just threw the whole project into a whole different category. Maintaining and operating elevators to get up and over on the bridge. But that was then, maybe there's something new now, but.
And it would need elevators because there's not the room that it would take to put in ramps.
That and ADA requirements, and when you put a bridge over a state highway, there's all sorts of design requirements on.
Yeah.
So you can't throw things off, and people can't jump off, and all sorts of other design requirements. And so putting in a real nice, unobtrusive bridge probably wouldn't be the end result there.
Is that information still available? Did you take it as deep as costing it out back then?
We do have data, so it was done in 2018, and we have by SGM, and based on the feedback at that time, I directed Mead and Hunt to look at an underpass based on the feedback that we received in 2018. So we do still have that data. I'm not fresh on it to recall it off the top of my head right now, but we do have that information. So if we do want to look into an overpass and an underpass, and this does go forward, I can provide that information to whatever consultant group comes on board to look at this, to try to get a cost estimate. I am skeptical that it would result in something that the EOTC or the communities would actually desire as an overpass.
Don't forget the airports
This is
right
David
there,
from
too.
Raptor. Just a quick thing. We've done a lot of overpasses throughout the valley, and from our experience, the cost between overpass and underpass is not very different. In this case, it certainly could be, but it's always been marginal, from my recollection.
Steve, would you like to receive that information to yourself, or are you asking the EOTC to request that be brought into the discussions?
No, I was just curious if, to see the ballpark figures on it, to consider that. We're going to be spending $10 million on a project, and if there's another viable option, I think we should consider both options personally. We might end up with the underpass being the viable option. And I'm looking at the bank, the berm that's on the side of the highway opposite Buttermilk. I would see that as the way people would get up onto the bridge on that side. There would probably not be a need for an elevator. There could be a ramp that would tie into the berm that's already in place. The Buttermilk side would be different. There's no topography there to aid in, a ramp going off of there. Also, the berm on the opposite side from Buttermilk, to me, makes the entrance into an underpass problematic, because the topography would be fighting against you.
Rachel, follow up?
Let me ask, David, do you know what it would cost to add study of an overpass to the work you're already anticipating doing?
Yeah.
I don't think at this point it would be a big add-on. So if this is funded, the next step is to create scopes and get them out to bid. And I can add this in with the scope. Say we want a cost estimate on overpass versus underpass. Not do a full concept design on the overpass necessarily, but say this is about what we would estimate this overpass to be. And I think with the work that's already been done by SGM, I don't think it would be a huge undertaking.
Yeah, it'd be nice to kind of get a little more of the magnitude of that. Some people small as 5,000, other people small as 15. But, I'm not inclined to want to support an overpass. I don't think the visual will be there. And I think that when you really get into the heights that you have to have for when people are really heavy hauler trucks and the type of cranes we see come in town and things like that, it's going to be a very tall bridge. And I'm a little familiar with those from crossing 36 down in Denver with elevators to the park and rides, things like that. And it takes a lot of maintenance, it really does. They tend to be where people go at night when they're cold and other things like that. And I have a hard time imagining our community supporting the visual context of an overpass, and unless, as I think, I'm not sure who it was who really pointed out before, it may have been you, Tori, when we were talking about the underpass at the airport entrance. How do you get people from crossing at grade because they don't want to go up the ramp, or how do you get parents with 3 kids to go up and over and back down, and people tend to not use them if they think it's safe to cross, and it's almost never really safe to cross. So I think you'd have to have a lot of barricades to keep people from deciding they wanted to just run the road. Mm-hmm. But if it's up to the full board. Do you have an idea what you think the magnitude of add-on costs would be to ask them for that?
The concept plan that was done in 2018, I think, was $25,000, and that got a concept for both overpass and underpass. So with $200,000, I think that we can add this in, and then, like I said, with the work that's already been done, I don't think it's a big add-on. And I'm happy to add that to the scope. Looking at public engagement that would be necessary at a certain point also, I think the question's going to continue to come up. So having that in with the initial documents could be a good thing.
I leave it to the rest of the board to.
Steve, I think I brought this up back in 2018, and after what was presented, I kind of backed off from that. But I'd appreciate, David, if you could pull up that data from 2018 and share it with us. And if it's not a big add-on to this study, I think try to use what you have and then go ahead and include it. But I'm not inclined. I have a fairly good memory, and I remember a few years ago that I was convinced that overpass wasn't going to get any traction.
It was a pretty robust discussion, pros and cons of both at that time, and it was pretty definitively not an overpass. So,
John, the same thing happened with the basalt underpass. We had a discussion about an overpass there, and it was a visual impact. So that's why we went with the underpass in basalt.
Francie, comment?
Yeah, when I joined RAFTA, they were talking about the underpass at 28th Street, and I asked then about an overpass because the underpass there is so complicated with the drainage and getting in and out of it because it's so small on the side where the RAFTA stop is. The space is so limited there. And they said that, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but I think they said that there was no way that the public was going to accept an overpass because of the interruption of the views. And if that happened in Glenwood, I could only imagine what it would be like in Aspen.
Okay, so from board members, is there support for adding this into the scope for the next phase of this?
I think we should have, just so we have some information before we make a decision. And if it's not that big of financial impact, and we have the information, and I think we should bring it forward just so we make an informed decision.
Yeah, I agree to have considered it. If it's not a big push or big add, I think it's worth it.
Are there any objectors?
Francie's rocking, I can see it.
I just need some clarification. So we're adding another $25,000 onto the $200,000 to investigate the overpass?
Thank you. That was my next question too. I don't think that we need to add any more money to it. I think that we can include it with the scope, and based on the work that's been done, I think we can keep it at $200,000 and get to the same place.
Okay, then I'll support it.
If everyone wants to look at it, that's fine with me. I mean, I just don't want to give false hope or waste time, and I support the budget going forward. Like Rachel and others, I'm thinking a lot about how does this fit into the long-term vision for the future. To my mind, right, a walkable core with a transit corridor that allows people to leave their cars outside and come in a clean and green and fast way is where we're going to end up. And so is this something that genuinely serves that purpose? Then great. If it's not, then is it something we're just sort of doing to have something due in the interim? And then that's a big ask. But assuming the latter is where we come to and we want to do it, I just can't see a scenario where, unless it's a 10-to-1 ratio of cost, that I'm going to consider something in the sky versus underneath the ground for all the reasons there. So if people genuinely are interested in looking at it, that's great. I'm happy to see it, but I don't want to just spend money and time with the false assumption that I'm going to support it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of it, but I would, obviously, if it's not going to cost money, I know it's going to take time. Obviously, I would go with the rest of the board. I really, out of everything I've heard about this underpass and everything, I really like Rachel's recommendation that we go to SCICO because really it's about buttermilk. And so I'd like to see a big push in that direction.
John?
I'm supportive of just checking it out since Dave says it's not going to take any extra money and very little amount of time. Plus, it shows the public that we did a little due diligence, again, because it's been 3 going on 4 years since this happened, just to show the general public that we did look at other alternatives, since the bill is roughly 10 million bucks, despite the fact that there's a good chance that we will be getting grants. So.
Yeah. Again, I can agree. It does strike me that maybe the contract would come in at under 200,000 if we did not include this. But, you know, there's still people who will periodically tell us we could solve the entrance with a, you know, overhead on, off ramp, you know, circles. And you know, we all know how impossible that is. I mean, this is a highway, not a state freeway, or overpasses at the airport business center, so there's no traffic light. And I think each one takes about 10 acres to produce. But you'll still have people telling you that's how we should solve the problem. And so maybe by doing the full demonstration of what an overpass is and looks like, it does show our due diligence. Maybe put a few things to rest.
All right, if there's no more comments, then we will be including that in the scope. All right. Other budget comments, questions, suggestions? This is a public hearing, so I will be opening it up to the public before coming back for a vote. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and do that then. Let's open the public hearing portion. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on the 2022 EOTC proposed budget? I have none in room. I'm looking on WebEx. If there's a member of the public that would like to comment on this budget, please unmute yourself. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring that item back to the table. We would need a motion and a second if there's no more discussion about the proposed budget.
Do we need the votes as individual boards and motions as individual boards? We do. Okay, I will make a motion on behalf of the City of Aspen to approve the 2022 EOTC budget and authorize the signing on that.
I'll second it.
For the City of Aspen, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can I add discussion to that before you call a vote? I just want to say I'm supportive of the WeCycle monies coming forward. Just seeing those bikes around town, seeing the growth of e-cycle, WeCycle use, I think it's been incredible. And also I want to thank the ski company for coming back in for the transit monies for the X Games. And for not spending them last year when they didn't have bus service. So it's kind of like we're just moving that money into this year, and I want to say how much I appreciate the efforts that they do to keep people out of cars for that event.
Yep. Thank you. So City of Aspen, we'll go ahead and vote on the proposed budget. I've got Councilor Doyle.
Yes.
Councilor Harnstein.
Yes.
Councilor Mesereau.
Yes.
Councilor Richards.
Yes.
And Tori is a yes as well. If Pitkin County would like to call their own roll vote.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 EOTC budget.
Thank you, Patty. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Francie. Any discussion from BOCC? Steve?
Yes, you do.
Okay, my question was, I remember reading in the packet that the commissioners approved the entire EOTC budget, and that's when we would vote on this item. Is that not correct, David?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about that, Steve. So procedurally, the city and the town sign a resolution of approval. The county does not sign a resolution of approval, but you will see it as a part of your budget process. So I'll be coming to you next Thursday, I believe, November 4th, and it'll progress through that way. So that will take the place of a resolution for you, will be that formal adoption of the budget.
So do we need to vote on it in this form or just wait till budget, or do both?
I think it's best for you to vote on it in this form as well.
Tonight and then? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so the recommendation is for the BOCC to vote on it right now in this form. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I'm not seeing any.
Kelly, Greg here.
Yeah, Greg, sorry, go ahead.
Great, thank you. I would love to have just a short conversation, just to make a note about the ski company's X Games request. I do understand it. I understand the money was not used last year. I just wanted to draw attention to the stats on this. This is an event that has an incredible worldwide reach. 105 million video views, all the live TV, televised, all this, reaching 197 countries, more than 500 million homes. It's quite stupendous. And they pulled it off last year without a single a participant in the audience live. And so, it's amazing how much, I'd have to say the carbon footprint was much lower last year because so many people did not attend in person. And I just wanted to make a note of that and ask if, how important is it to have 50,000 people driving to Aspen to see this thing if they can pull it off for 500 million without that. It's a tiny fraction. I thought it went quite well without such a huge live audience. Just wanted to make a note of that, and I'd love to hear more from Ski Company and ESPN on why do they really need such a massive crowd for this event. Thanks.
Okay.
You
Greg,
know,
you'll have your shot when they come before us, I think, for their permit.
And I want to add to that, Greg, I want you to tell those 50,000 people they can't come.
I'd like to tell the
Okay.
Restaurant and Lodging Association that we have disinvited 50,000 people to the valley.
Buy on monster drinks.
I hated waitressing those weekends because nobody tipped.
Yeah, the swag bags. Think of those
All right.
consumption there.
Any further discussion from BOCC?
That was
Hey,
Yuffie's comment.
Oh, Yuffie, okay. I'm not seeing any, I will call the vote, I guess. Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. Patty Clapper.
I vote yes.
Francie Jacober.
Yes.
Greg Poshman.
Bless you.
Yes, and I take Patty's challenge.
Steve Child.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Tori.
And if Town of Snowmass?
All right, on behalf of Town of Snowmass Village, I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 EOTC proposed budget.
I'll second.
And any further discussion? We'll call the vote. Tom Fritzstein?
Aye.
Tom Good?
Aye.
Bob Circus?
Aye.
Alyssa Shank?
Aye.
And Bill Madsen, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. This is delicious.
All right.
As the meetings get longer.
So our second public hearing and action item this afternoon is the EOTC work plan. As I believe you are all aware, there's a lot of overlap between the budget and work plan, so everything that shows up in the budget is also within the work plan itself. However, we do have some items that are within the work plan that don't have budget items associated with them, so they don't show up on the budget document. As this slide is an overview of everything that we have in the work plan, I am cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to get through all of this next year. It is ambitious, but I think it's best to try to move the goalpost on as many projects as we can at any given time. So we do have the first one here. I guess I point out on the slide the highlighted items. These are items that are work plan only and do not show up in the budget. And I'll run through these quickly. The first one is pursuing EOTC budget mitigation. This is the transfer of the no fare service. I believe they will finish this up in 2021. But if there are any loose ends, this in 22, that's why this was put in the work plan. The second one here, this is both in the work plan and budget. This is the EOTC retreat and long-term planning discussion. As some background on this, based on conversations at the staff level, we believe that more or less a longer EOTC meeting is appropriate at this point for the conversations that we're looking to have. So the plan at this point and what has been discussed is bringing in the Fair and Peers team that worked with the Aspen Institute on the Upper Valley Mobility Report. They reported out at the Wheeler in 2017 on induced demand, and then we hired them back again to work on the Integrated Mobility System study phase 1 and phase 2 that fed into the near-term transit improvement program that you all adopted here this last July. There were some items that were identified as longer-term items that were in that IMS study that I don't believe you all have seen the benefit of the nuances and the research and work that they did on that. So I would like to bring them in to present to you in person at one of these at this longer meeting so that you can hear it directly from them. A presentation on where they see transportation being nationally, and where they see it within the valley, and where they see it moving within the valley. They've done a lot of work in the valley, as well as the options that they see in terms of long-term mitigation to traffic and promoting people onto transit. This would give you the opportunity to also ask questions of them at that time.
Yeah, I served on the Upper Valley of the Aspen Institute. I became convinced of the induced demand. I think we had 4 transportation experts that made presentations. I would like to have a counterpoint presented as well, because we get some people that still think 4 lanes of mixed traffic with underground parking in town. But I'd like to just have a credible counterpoint to induced demand.
David, I'm not sure if you're talking about the April meeting that is kind of put down as a workshop, and I fully endorse that idea, and our group as a whole getting together for some long-range strategic planning. I don't think 3 hours is going to accomplish that, and we're only meeting 4 times a year. If a presentation is coming forward, that's going to take up most of the meeting. And, with 15 members, that's like 2 minutes each for everyone else left to even participate. So that sounds like a refresher more than it does a real strategic planning session by this board. And I think that it should be a longer day, and I think it should be more interactive with us. I will continue to state that, I appreciate the Institute's work greatly, and I am very much in favor of reducing traffic in town and in Snowmass and in our triangle, as it were. However, I don't know that we can really discuss improving transportation in the long term without beginning to talk about the entrance to Aspen. And it's a roadblock to everything that we try to do. I hate spending $10 million to speed the bus up X many minutes and then watch it slow right back down again, getting stuck in mixed traffic. And so for me, that it has to be a topic of this retreat. And it was actually in our minutes that the board discussed the entrance a period of time at our last meeting, and would like to talk about steps to move that forward in the future. So I want to make sure that that's part of that retreat. The second thing I want to kind of bring up is maybe a little broader philosophical, and I'd like everyone to kind of think about it a little bit. But it has struck me that our transportation system in the valley, in many ways, we are all operating on a lot of assumptions that were there from 20 years ago or even 30 years ago. And one of those was that the down valley will always provide this safety valve workforce. And we've seen an awful lot of growth in the mid-valley and lower valleys, but we're still seeing declining ridership, and we're still seeing an employee shortage. And I'm kind of curious what's happening, because I think it may affect all of our plans about how much affordable housing we need in the Upper Valley, in our little triangle. But, with 300,000 square feet of new growth coming on in El Jebel, and not even enough housing to come with it to stock those own stores, and the type of real community professional jobs and good wages that are being earned throughout our valley, we're all supporting a transportation system in many ways to bring a commuting workforce up here that is probably shrinking, even with the growth in the valley, because more of those new homes are now second homes. Often they're retiree homes from people who have left Aspen. But are we basing our work for the next 20 years on a mirage of who all our commuters are going to be in the next 20 years? And I don't want to link housing and transportation per se, but they are. And even the EIS, when it was calculating its numbers for the entrance, was related to the fact that how few of Aspen's workforce we actually housed. It was like 35% back then. I have no idea what it is now. And so it's just a broader concept, but are we really understanding the circumstances of our system? And not, I mean, everyone talks about, well, what big changes we're going to see when electric vehicles and autonomous cars come along. Well, what's going to happen when everyone in the Mid-Valley is working at home or working further down Valley or not working at all? And what does that mean for the money and how we're designing our transportation efforts? So I don't know quite how to link that in, but I just think it's worth saying that I don't want to spend a day of retreat or the next 2 years building a system for a model that has changed radically. Thank you for listening.
Just a couple points. One, the retreat or long-term planning discussion is by no means nailed down at this point. So I thank you for all those comments, and we will continue to take those into account as we plan for that. Secondly, the Fair and Pierce team actually did look at who would be riding transit out I believe 30 years, maybe it was 20 years. And they did that as part of their study. And that was something that I appreciated in the work that they did. And part of the reason why I think it would be productive to have them come and speak with you. Also, we're not looking to do a one and done retreat here. So you can think of this as more or less being the first step. And based on the conversations that we have and the feedback that we receive at that meeting, from that information would then inform what that next step is. And so the thinking in not doing a full day is that we're just not entirely sure where we should go after that point. So we need to get information out there. We need to have a conversation, and then we need to take the next step that's logical based on that information that we have at that point. If that makes sense.
And that makes sense to me. If I can follow up with 2 questions.
Yeah.
It seems that then perhaps the July meeting should be scheduled for longer, or that we should have more than 4 meetings this year if we're, so that we don't have scheduling problems later if we're really anticipating that the 3 hours in April is a little more of a kickoff and we'll need a follow-up, because April to July leaves a lot of time, like school students, to forget everything they learned in between. So there's that. And then the second question was, just slipped by, but I would be concerned that we're not, when was the study done that you're talking about, that was it just completed? Because I'm wondering with the changes we're seeing with short-term rentals and COVID impacts on our real estate, is it as valid as it was when real estate prices of Mid-Valley have gone up 30% in the last 18 months?
Yeah, they completed this study in June of this year.
Okay, so it will be current. Thank you.
I just have I don't see a meeting in July, sorry, but.
Was it July that I saw?
It's March, April, May, and October.
Yeah, so if we, I just didn't want to, I'm sorry, I had the wrong
Sorry,
date.
Kelly, I didn't mean to.
Thank you, Patty.
I'm patient. Thanks. No, I just wanted to comment a little bit. I mean, I think, we have the mobility study, which pointed out, I think, some of the things that for us to keep in mind, and maybe one of the outproducts of the workshop could be, what's missing here? What do we have? What do we need? I think some of what you're asking for is going to be hard, honestly, to get. I mean, I hear a lot from Greg also, like the shifting nature of work. I think some of it's just yet to be seen. Like, I know there's probably some visionaries out there that can anticipate what that is going to look like with shifting natures of work. So, I would say let's start there. Let's figure out what we're missing from what we currently have. And also, David, just sort of procedurally, I'm wondering will you be coming back to us with a retreat agenda for us to look at individually or by jurisdiction, or will we do that in our first meeting of the year?
That level of detail hasn't been fleshed out yet. I am planning on coming out at least as a part of the March meeting to do some prep and hey, this is what we're looking at coming up in April. Based on how planning goes, I might come around to the individual jurisdictions with the agenda ahead of time, but that hasn't yet been determined.
And I would support Rachel's request for a longer day, whether it's that day or another day. That time we all had together at the Meadows still stands out to me as being really productive and effective. So I think we should replicate that.
Patty?
Yeah, I just want to note that these meeting dates, which I think are great to set them up ahead of time, but they almost all fall on dates of EOTC meetings, of Northwest COG meetings. And I'm on both COG executive boards for the regular COG board and for the Economic Development District board. So those meetings run from about 10 to 3. Just of note, I'll keep you posted if those meeting dates change, or I may have to leave one early or get to one late, but because Alyssa is chairman of COG, I am vice chair. So if we're both not there, then the treasurer, who has a 2-year-old and a newborn, needs to bring babies to the meeting. So just a heads up.
Other comments on this item? David, I assume you've heard some support here for taking those into consideration for meeting length and meeting dates, and I'm sure we'll hear back from you about that before. You don't need any direction from us right now.
I don't need formal direction. I want you to know that we're planning it, and this is where we're at in the conversations, and receive that feedback. That is definitely valuable in us planning ahead and getting it set, to understand what you're expecting and what you would desire from it.
Okay.
I do have a few more items to cover here if we're ready to move on.
Go right ahead.
Okay. We do, I'm not too sure how to go. Oh, it is going back. Okay. Do have 2 other blocks of projects here. A lot of this did show up within the budget that we just discussed. So we have 4 projects revolving around the Brush Creek Park and Ride. So that's the flap grant improvements construction that is anticipated to be fairly time intensive on the staff side next year, as well as the bicycle and pedestrian connection to the Rio Grande ABC feasibility study phase 2. The 2 at the end here that were not part of the budget, this is developing a partnership with Holy Cross Energy for EV charger installation out of the Park and Ride. This is actually ongoing now, so working with CDOT and Holy Cross to lay the legal groundwork for them to be able to place those chargers out there, hopefully on the coattails of the flap grant construction. But this will carry over into next year. I want you to know that this is going on. We are working to try to get those chargers out there as soon as we can following construction. And then the second highlighted item here, this is a recommendation on long-term parking plan. This is a parking plan to accommodate parking at the Park and Ride over 24 hours. So if you recall, we had a conversation at the April 2020 meeting about this, and that is why you're seeing it here. It was decided at that time that we should be looking at parking over 24 hours out at the Park and Ride, and that 2022 was the year to talk about it. So looking to bring that plan out to you next summer at your summer meeting in May. And then with the next group of projects here, this is the near-term transit improvement program Tier 1 priorities. So we've got obviously the, as discussed with the budget, we have the Tresca to Owl Creek Trail project, the Buttermilk underpass, as well as the analysis of Up Valley and Down Valley BRT service to Snowmass, additional permanent automated vehicle counters, and the last one here is the HOV lane enforcement analysis. So this one does not have a budget associated with it. Looking to bring an analysis out to you, again at your summer meeting next year, to identify ways in which HOV lane enforcement could occur on Highway 82 moving forward. And then all of those action items.
You have a question here?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, really, I just want to bring up something that I keep bringing up with David about kind of an overall valley-wide EV, charging plan. Like, what does our valley look like in terms of EV infrastructure? And I think based on our conversations, you said that Holy Cross is doing a bunch of that work now. I wonder if there's space in this work plan to recognize that, or to sort of, charge you with starting to talk with all the various players who are looking at this problem or trying to come together to solve this, need, which is just going to be burgeoning, because I just see it as a gap in all of our transportation infrastructure. I don't know if you want to react, and then we'll see if any folks care or have any interest. But
I would say that at this point, based on the work plan that we have right now, I think we would need to pull something off in order to allow time for that to really do an analysis and come back to you, depending on the scope of that analysis. There is some work going on now, obviously on the county side. Holy Cross is doing work. The city has a great EV plan. I think that's really the model of the valley right now. And then I'm also working with Snowmass on EV chargers, making sure that there is some consistency between what we're doing out at Brush Creek, what's going on the county side in terms of facilities, and what's within the city plan, and trying to do some of that coordination. But really, it's based around right now getting those charges out of Brush Creek and making sure that those are as coordinated as possible. I think a larger valley-wide EV plan could be depending on the scope, could be a pretty significant effort. Which is why I say we would probably need to bump something off of the work plan and add money into the budget in order to do it. I would encourage it to be a 23 project right now. I know that might be a little farther off for you for a lot of the interest right now, but I don't see that we would be able to fit it in without knocking something else off.
And I recognize maybe Whole Valley is beyond the full scope of this board, but trying to convene the partners who are trying to figure out that problem.
Rachel and then Francie.
Yeah, it's real quick, it's on hers. That's a great concept and a great plan. And what I'm wondering, and I don't know enough about it, but there has been this valley effort for recovery from the COVID, the economic roaring back or whatever they're calling it. And since that's involving all the local municipalities and counties, maybe just requesting that information from that group. What do you have currently within your jurisdiction? Do you know of EV stations? And I know Sarah has been participating with that. I don't know if it's just been economic redevelopment or economic recovery, but I think this is part of the economics of the future. And you're right about that. But it just would be nice if there was some sort of format or forum. There used to be the Valley mayors would all meet regularly and talk about those sort of things. But just to be able to start having liaisons that can share common planning information like that would be really helpful.
The other item I want to emphasize on the EOTC side is we are still bound to, if we do EV charging, it has to incentivize transit ridership.
Right.
So anything that we do, it has to be accessory to that transit component.
I think you've told me that, and I keep forgetting it.
Such as EV charging stations at park and rides.
At park and rides, yes, because then you're incentivizing people to go use that transit facility because you have that infrastructure.
Yeah.
Members of the EOTC, just point of clarification, we can have a conversation in light of your greenhouse gas goals. City of Aspen council members, this fits in. I was reviewing the goal work plan today.
Okay.
So I just encourage you when you have that work session to bring that up and decide whether you'd like to have a leadership role with Aspen in that endeavor to support the EOTC's interests. Thank you.
Thanks.
Francie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much of the responsibility for providing EV facilities how much of that is incumbent on government? I mean, because I've read that the Tesla fast charging stations are going to be at gas stations. And so do we have to provide separate charging stations than what is going to be provided by the industry? Is that our responsibility? I'm just wondering about that, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if anybody does. So I just wanted to ask that. And then secondly, we still don't have any new cars coming out because of the computer chip problem. So, and nobody seems to know. I talked to some people at Ford recently. Nobody seems to know when new cars are going to be out. There are no new cars. So we have a little bit of breathing room there. So just that comment. But I am curious about, is it our responsibility to provide charging, or is it the industry's responsibility? We don't provide gas stations. We never have as government.
It depends on how quickly you want to move on climate change, quite frankly. If we let industry barrel on like they've been so far, we wouldn't even have electric vehicles. And so, I think that when you're kick-starting a major change such as electrification, you are going to be seeing government investment to make that change happen for better community outcomes. And I think the governor has allocated a certain amount of money towards electrification along the interstates and things like that. But, you know, just looking at the news, which was either yesterday or the day before, that Tesla had placed an order for 100,000, Hertz placed an order with Tesla for 100,000 vehicles because they want to show their commitment to a green economy. You know, I think that's great, and I hope every guest who rents a car starts driving a Tesla or an electric vehicle in our town. And so there's an awful lot of things that we provide to induce a certain type of behavior. And that's what this is in my mind.
I totally get that, and I totally support that. I just think that we could do a study of where else is EV going to be provided, you know, before we jump in full on to filling up the valley with places you can jump off the road and get charged. I just think it'd be interesting to see what's coming from the industry, what's coming from Tesla and Ford and other people, not to mention gas station people, you know.
Interesting. Oh, hold on, I've got a line up here. We'll go to Steve, then Skippy, Greg, and then Ward. Steve.
So on the HOV lane enforcement analysis, I am wondering, David, is there technology that we could tie together the permanent automated vehicle counters? Do any of those vehicle counters also count passengers in the vehicles? Is that technology out there that we could combine those two things and maybe have one or two of the vehicle counters also counting passengers in the vehicles?
So the analysis that I did in 2019, it was a brief analysis of the technology that was available. The technology wasn't even there to be able to reliably count HOV passengers. So it was experimental. It wasn't approved by the Federal Highways Administration, and it was only being implemented at that time in the San Francisco Bay Area on a limited stretch of highway. So this analysis would look at where we are now, see if that's a possibility. That is certainly a great thing that we need to look into. But at this point, I'm not able to address that right now. But I'm doubtful that we're probably to that point yet.
Thanks, David. Skippy?
Well, I mean, I was just going to respond to Francie's question as best I can. I appreciate you bringing it up because I think we want to have a future where we're ready for electric vehicles. And I think we're sort of in this weird transitional place where if it wasn't for governments and those that were not concerned about profit making that initial investment, we would not be making the transition to electric vehicles that we are currently. And we're now at the place where many major car manufacturers have already said they're going to be 100% electric in the next decade. So Volvo, Jaguar, et cetera, Ford's going all electric by 35 for even its pickup trucks. So I think the impetus for the major players to guarantee charging is now there, right? And so we can begin to shift that burden. However, like you said, if it's just gas stations, well, there's a lot more cars coming up and down than there are land at those gas stations for charging. And so I think it's a question of less, do we need to be providing enough electric charging stations for free for the entire family community? I don't think that we do. But should we start to work with those groups that want to put in that infrastructure to provide them space and coordination to make it work? I think so. So I think that's sort of like the transitional moment we're in.
Thanks, Skippy. Greg, and then Ward. Greg?
Yeah, I would just add on, I appreciate Steve and Skippy's comments. I do know that the sheriff came to us this week with a request for cameras that they could use that read license plates, and that technology, I'm just wondering if there's not a lot of money put into that, but if the technologies could actually be one and the same in some cases, as those cameras they're getting can read 2 lanes of traffic. If it's going to be expandable, and if they can read a license plate, you think they can see who's in, how many people are in the car. It's a creepy thought, but it's just so you know that they're talking about this as well. The other thing I was going to say is that just the estimated demand for our electrical infrastructure is 3 to 4 times what we have now, and certainly electric vehicle charging demand for that is going to be high. So I think it's forward thinking to be working on that now. Just to add on to what's been already said. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Ward?
Since I don't have a Tesla, I don't have the answer to this. Are Tesla chargers proprietary? Will they only work with Teslas?
Yes.
And so GM, I think, just announced that they're going to be putting out 40,000 EV stations, charging stations. Are all of these going to be proprietary?
I don't think so.
The answer is no.
I don't think so.
They were proprietary. They aren't anymore.
But Tesla is.
Tesla will not be proprietary. They have announced a plan to make themselves available. It's a huge market. Why wouldn't they? So they've already announced that they're going to become available to other chargers, other cars.
And in the city, we're moving towards people paying for the electricity that they're charging their vehicles on. So I'm assuming that Tesla is and GM is going to be doing the same thing. And just one point to the trying to count the number of people in cars. I think we've done this before, paid to have this done, is that cell phone pings can give you a pretty good accurate count of how many people are coming into town. I don't know if it's granular enough. I thought it was granular enough to see if they were riding a bus or a car, but that's an interesting and scary technology.
Has a phone in their hand.
John?
I just wanted to quickly mention that there are several municipalities, I can't remember their names, but they are writing in to their building codes plug-ins for electric cars so that it's already in your house, so that when you get an electric car, you don't have to tear your house apart.
We have that in our building code, our new energy code.
I'm hoping we can do that here.
And so, can I real quick, Basalt Vista has them at all the new Basalt Vista homes. That's the project above the high school. And one of the first things one of the families did was to buy an all-electric vehicle and then paint their indoor walls to match it. Very cool.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Nancy?
Well, Holy Cross now, if you buy an electric vehicle, they will provide you for free with chargers.
Oh, wow.
So they're totally on it. What?
You have to pay for the installation.
Yeah, but they get it.
Yeah, you have to pay for the electricity.
You get 3 chargers, I think, one for your garage, one for your house, one for your parking, however it works, I'm not sure exactly. But what I would like to see us push for is, if we're going to go into the business of charging stations, I would like them to be self-generated with solar rather than hooking into the grid that is already going to be so overburdened with our electrification that if we come up with designs that include solar and a battery situation, I mean, I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of the battery right now, but Holy Cross would know. I would prefer that than a whole bunch of government-provided EV stations that are sucking from the grid without giving back to the grid.
I got a hand here from Greg. I don't know if that's a new hand or an old hand, but I don't see you on screen anymore.
It's like
Doris, Greg?
he's on the back Aspen Mountain.
What, did we lose him? He's out charging his non-electric vehicle.
Yeah, not a problem.
He owns a donut to all of us.
Yeah.
Okay, so to summarize that, we're looking at Valley EV. Just to understand what's going on valley-wide, there's a suggestion for the city of Aspen maybe to lead some of that research and what we're doing in our work plan. If that's okay, David has responded that in order to pursue that further, and Kelly, I guess I'm mostly directing this at you, to pursue that further in this work plan, that it would take an amendment to the work plan and something to come off. Are you okay with the direction of the city getting some information during our work plan and moving forward like that, or are you suggesting to the group to make an amendment to the work plan?
I don't fully understand what the scope of your work would be. I trust you guys do good work in this area.
No, it was just a random thought that there's a valley-wide convening group. I'm not sure that anyone in that group would respond at all. That's all I was saying, is that we need a valley-wide look, and that's what you're asking for. I just hate to see us being the ones to take on all the work, I mean, EOTC of the valley right now.
I would add
Well, we
that-
have an EV master plan, I think is what
Sure,
David's
no, I know
referring
that,
to,
yeah.
to share that.
Yeah, short of a formal EV master plan, I can say that I am in conversations on the county side, as well as the city and town amongst staff, as well as Holy Cross, and constantly looking at EVs and where they should go, where should the chargers be. There are large conversations going on around this topic, and I will continue to be involved in those conversations, even if we're not producing, say, a formal plan.
Do you
for the
think you
EV
could add
chargers.
them to your reports out to us, like your informational reports? And then if there is sort of work that can generate from that, that would be where we might identify it.
I can see I have to see what the projects are that are coming forward. Some of them are like on the county side, internal. Some of them are more external on the Holy Cross side. So let me think about that. Let me see what makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
One last comment. There's a new company, I was just reading about it yesterday, and they're called Volta, V-O-L-T-A, and they are installing charging stations at retail shops with advertising on them. And the retailers are paying 50-50, and the company's doing the other half, so that it brings in their higher dollar shoppers to the retail centers. But they're commercializing these all across the country now, and that shopping centers that want to bring them in, just like, I mean, I'm traveling to hotels now in Grand Junction, and they have EV charging stations to make sure that those customers stay there. But maybe there's a commercial line and private sector dollars that would be interested in pursuing this further as well. But
They have chargers at some of the hotels in Glenwood too.
yeah,
But
I
they're
mean,
Tesla.
It's just really picking up that way. But the company's called Volta, and they can do a 50-50 split with people who want to install a charging station for their customers' benefit.
Doesn't St. Regis have one?
They may, I don't know. Okay.
Ready to move on?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Steve. Sorry, we're not. Steve.
So I have to leave the library. They are closing. I'd like to make
Check out a good book.
No, wait, Steve, there's picnic tables right outside the library in Glenwood. So do we need to vote on this work plan?
Is there more presentation, or do you want us to?
All right.
We were doing well there for a while.
All right. Well, let me see if we can get through here. This is just a representation of what is in your packet. So everything on the left side are the projects that we just went through. It does identify the responsible party, the time frame, whether it would be reported out to you, as well as the expected outcome from the action and the link to the strategic plan and comprehensive valley transportation plan. This is page 2. I think I point out that this last line here, specific to some of the comments that we heard earlier, that's more of the catch-all. So things that are related to EOTC, but we're maybe not the spearhead on, I do continue to keep track of those and participate as appropriate. And then 2023 is still a sketch right now. One thing I wanted to point out in 2023 is we are looking to bring the food truck out to Brush Creek Park and Ride in 2023. I was able to amend the permit with Pickens County Community Development. So hopefully we will get the construction done next year. We'll have the EV chargers in the end of about this time next year. And then we can kick off 2023 with a food truck out there and pretty much a brand new park and ride.
Nice.
And then the last piece within the work plan are the meeting dates. So we are looking at 3 regular meetings, one the end of March, one the end of May, and one the end of October. Right now we have been tentatively looking at the end of April for the long-term planning discussion to leave time later in the year for those follow-up conversations as appropriate. So right now we just have it penciled in at a 3-hour meeting block that is definitely not set in stone. And then the anticipated topics at the March meeting is the report out on the AABC Brush Creek Park and Ride connection, trail connection, as well as prep for the long-term planning discussion. And then in May, we would be looking at the HOV lane enforcement analysis and the Brush Creek Park and Ride long-term parking plan review. And then we'd be back here next October reviewing 2023 budget and work plan. And that's everything that I had. I do want to see, I heard something about potentially about some conflicts with the COG in terms of those
Yeah,
meeting
but,
dates.
I think we'll
It's-
just have to figure it out.
It's the same. I mean, their meetings are are we in the last week of the month? The fourth Thursday of the month. It's always the same day.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that hasn't changed in 20 years.
No. It's just a long day.
Gotcha.
But it is what it is.
I probably won't be able to attend it because I'm on the Wolf Reintroduction group, and they're changing their meetings to Thursday for me because they can't do Tuesdays.
Now you have to
And
go.
every other Wednesday, the fourth Wednesday I can't do. So I'm the only one with the conflict on Wednesday, so they're moving it to Thursday for me for next year, and so. I
You
don't
know what, they meet on Thursdays, but they only meet one Thursday a month, right? They don't
The
meet
last
every Thursday.
Last Thursday.
What you just said is EOTC Thursday. So, just saying.
So we're looking at potentially losing Francie.
Well, pointing
You're
at
not
Cal.
losing me.
You're
it's
staying?
just
Okay.
well, Patty has another meeting after our original COG meeting. You're not losing me.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we just have agenda meetings on Thursdays, but we can talk about that next year. I can work around that.
But it works for everyone else.
Yeah.
I recognize that there's a lot of
Looking at
people
what other
involved
day
in this
might
committee,
work.
so trying to hit a perfect day for everybody is almost near impossible. As long as we can, it appears that we can still continue to make quorum.
No.
We'll
This is
figure it
Tom
out.
Fritzstein. I also have the same conflict with Northwest COG. And Patty and
And you too.
that's three of us.
And Skippy.
Plus one.
But what
It's
time
not
does
a
the COG
problem
meeting
if
end?
it's the afternoon meeting, 4 o'clock meeting, but we go to a longer meeting, it's a problem.
Right.
COG's meetings usually end at 12, 12:30, but I'm also in the Economic Development
I know
District.
you were, but I was just kind of
But if
wondering.
you do all day,
Mine's just my morning.
if this is all day. then-
Okay.
Full meeting day.
If we could do a different Thursday of the month, it would be.
Any
I
other?
mean, not the second Thursday. That's RAFTA.
Yeah, and that becomes the issue. Is we
But maybe the
outside
third Thursday.
outside fourth Thursdays, then we start getting into weeks where there are regular council and board meetings, which is why it has been bumped to the fourth Thursday over time.
I would just leave it.
It's yeah, well, yeah.
Let's do it on the 5th Thursday, because there are not very many of them.
Not very many of these meetings
Clever.
either.
It might happen often
It's a
enough.
veteran
That's
move.
how we
That's our
decide
travel
what
week.
times we-
Okay, so we will continue to look at these meeting dates and identify if there are any other times that might work better for folks. But at this point, we do, the staff recommendation is to adopt an authorized signature on the resolution of approval for the staff proposed 2022 EOTC work plan.
I was hoping to make that motion so we can move Steve along from the
Library.
side of the building.
Vicky made
Greg.
her way outside.
So I would like to move for the BOCC to approve a resolution adopting the 2022 elected officials transportation committee work plan.
I'll second the motion.
I'll second.
I think Greg already did.
Oh.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
I have a comment, but it's not related to passing it, so we can come back after so we can vote, but that's one thing I wanted to.
I'm dying to know.
If you're sure.
Yeah.
So I'll do a roll call vote. Patty?
Yes.
Francie? Aye. Steve?
Aye.
Thank you, Greg.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Thank you, Tori.
Thank you. Town of Snowmass, would you like to call roll call vote?
Aye for an aye.
You guys need a motion first.
I don't need it.
Oh, to approve the work plan? I'll make the motion to approve the 2022 EOTC work plan.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Bob second.
Thanks, Bob. And roll call vote. Circus,
Yes.
Fritzstein,
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
Jank,
Yep.
Adson, yes.
And for Aspen, need a motion?
I move that we adopt the EOTC work plan for 2022.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Ward, second by Rachel. Councilor
Poor
Doyle.
Skippy.
It's closer.
Yes, fine.
Councilor Richards.
Yes.
Councilor Mesereau.
Yeah.
Councilor Howenstein.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well.
So, Tori, I have a request, moving on to the next item.
Yes?
Dave, I hope you don't mind. I want to take a moment to thank John Kruger.
We're getting
Are we there? Okay. I just want to make sure we don't miss it, because I know we're starting to lose people here at the
We
table.
roast him every chance we get, Patty. We're not going to miss this one either.
Good, because I have a roast to share too.
Skippy, did you have an
I
item?
just had a comment, just to put it out there, or maybe for some brief discussion. And I never really understand in these giant groups when is the appropriate time. But in the work plan, we have a lot of great projects coming back up. We've been talking a lot at the council table about the mental health crisis in our valley and in our world. And at some level, these things all go back to a sense of disconnection from each other, from our community, from joy, and from ourselves. And so I had this experience a couple days ago. I was out for a run. I had just read our EOTC packet, so it was fresh in my mind. And I was outside, beautiful fall leaves, cut it under one of the underpasses and out the other side. And it's a beautiful, super clean underpass, but it's just this very stark white box environment, as underpasses are. And there is just, this isn't a new field, but there's just more and more research and knowledge being done around space making and how physical environments can affect our mental state and our ability to connect with other people. And I think it would be very wise for us to start thinking about, as we pursue these projects, what are the little touches, the bits of creativity, of uniqueness that we can bring into projects that can stop and give someone a moment of joy, that can encourage them to connect with or talk to the person sitting next to them rather than looking at their phone, and really just bring a bit of delight into the community. And I don't know exactly how that works, if it's one day on a project where everyone gets in the room and you invite in some local artists and you say, what fun things can we do? Or if it's a discussion that happens at the table. I don't know how you get there, but it seems that we have a really amazing opportunity to touch people multiple times as they start and finish their day and move up and down our valley, and we should look at that.
Have you ever seen the underpass in Snowmass?
No, I was going to say my favorite example, not that, one of my favorite examples of something that just gives me delight every time is the sign that inexplicably totals the day. I don't know how many people I've told about that. I've showed that sign when it got moved. I had a panic attack, and it's just this silly little thing that makes no sense. But you know what? It really, you just think the people that came up with this were awesome, and I wish I was in that room. And for a brief moment, you feel like you were.
What's the sign say?
Under this, when you go from Town Park to the other side of the road on Brush Creek, the underpass. I mean, it's an underpass.
Yeah.
It's small, but the Snowmass Arts Advisory Board had people that applied to, local people. I did one of the squares, and I don't even do art. And it's really fun, and you just go underneath, and there's just all these brightly colored local people just went and painted a square.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Go check it out.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh,
So
yeah.
just, how do we find one of those things for each project is kind of the thought.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
Very good.
Yeah.
There's a great one in
I have
California.
a lot of paint that will be left
Yeah.
over at my
Can I
house.
borrow your hand?
She's got it on her hand.
David, where does that intersect for us? EOTC, suggestions at the table for arting up some of the underpasses.
The EOTC as a body does not own or maintain any of the underpasses. So I think that if they're managed by the City of Aspen Parks and Open Space, for example, I think that's the venue to go through. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But
And I think it's the broader concept Skippy's talking about. When he talked about the rafta eggs, the dinosaur eggs, that they're just, I know rafta caused some grief for it, but I think they're really iconic now. And you use that example when you're
Skippy
playing
keeps sitting on them and no little dinosaurs are coming.
But it was just that broader concept, not just underpasses.
Yeah, so it's like, how do we, in the process of bringing these things forward, how do we take a pause and a moment to focus on that aspect of creativity, connection, compassion, and bring that forward in some way?
Yeah.
as we do construction projects, I think that is, and they come to you for those design elements. I think that's the time to really put in that feedback.
Yeah.
Say the Buttermilk Underpass goes through, I think there would be opportunities as a part of that design process to to provide that feedback. And I'll certainly keep it in mind and internalize that and bring it forward as we do projects.
And I think that's great too, because I mean, I'm seeing nodding heads of like, yeah, that stuff is great. And I know examples of, past projects from back when where I hear from staffers who said, man, we had the craziest, best idea, but we never brought it forward because we thought, like people wouldn't be that into it. So if people know that there's a receptive body, that goes somewhere too.
Yeah.
We can always add $1 million to the Buttermilk budget.
The artists can afford housing now.
John will do the art.
That's not my area of expertise, but who did the mural on the side of the building by the Big Rap?
It's a
Shepherd Ferry.
And Jimmy Marcus, the Marcuses own the building. Jimmy was the one who brought him into town to do it.
It's fun watching him do it.
I don't know what that cost, but
yeah,
that guy's a talent.
Yeah.
Or we could get Banksy.
Yeah, I mean he did the most famous Obama poster. That's how he got. Yeah.
There's a mural on the new apartment buildings at the roundabout in Carbondale, down at the retail level, one whole block. It's like half of this wall maybe. It's it's a dark background with a pink flower. It's kind of Georgia O'Keeffe-ish. It's better than having it not be there.
Yeah. Good.
Sounds good. Thank you for that, Skippy. And I guess that's jurisdictional, and we can look into that more. Let's get on to information-only updates and some roasting. Yes?
Yeah, I don't have anything additional on the informational-only pieces, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on the items in the packet.
Well, tell us, what has it been like to work with John Kruger?
John Kruger's been fantastic.
A word. Patty, go right ahead.
Yes, John, we are going to miss you terribly. I've worked with you for a great many years. I just want to say John always maintains this calm composure at meetings. But have you ever caught him on the street? Yeah, I know how to rile him, and it just he kind of lets off some steam. But when he's at meetings and when he's dealing with city and or EOTC business, he's always been, very level-headed. And I know he was very happy when we hired Dave to come in and manage that, because it's like this sigh of relief. So we're going to miss you, and we're going to bring you back for the artwork in the underpasses.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you for all your years of service. We truly appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Patty. Yes, we did want to take a little bit of time. We're just about at the end of our meeting today, but we did want to take a little time and express our appreciation for all the work that you've done, both with the EOTC, but City of Aspen as well, and working with the other jurisdictions. John, we say it all the time. We're going to keep saying it every meeting you're at until you're not here. But we have just all appreciated the work that you've done, and we love you, and we're going to miss you.
Well, thank you very much. I think this is a great group, and I've accomplished a lot over the years if you really go back and think about it. So I've been proud to work and participate in it, and I hope it keeps going like it's been going, and I think David's doing a great job, so more good things to come. But thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
So what's next?
Well,
Is the
enjoy,
city giving you a
yeah.
Tesla as a going-away present?
I told my staff I'd like a new Rolex, but they didn't bite on.
I think a Tesla might be cheaper.
Yeah, I was going to say a Rolex.
Maybe a 50-pack of scratch-off lottery tickets.
Might get you close to it. Any other items that you need at this time, David?
No, I think we're done.
Right on the mark,
I'd just like to say to
6:15.
John that, I don't know that I could have been nearly at this place in this position without you, and the support and the insights that you provided over the years have been invaluable. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Very good.
Thanks.
Would you accept the motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair?
I would.
I would make that motion.
I will second that motion. Beat you to it again. I beat you all morning.
And I thought you were
All
trying
those
to
in favor?
get in between the
Aye.
last to make the
Any
motion.
opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. We are
Greg's
adjourned.
opposed.
Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you to GrassRoots.
I'm laughing because Patty made it.
Oh, y'all.
Good evening. Happy Thursday, everybody.
I was like, is anyone?
I waited. I waited for people.